Welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the New Construction Marketing Podcast. I am beyond excited to introduce our guest for today, although I think he does not need an introduction. Welcome to the show, Jeff Shore.
Thank you, Anya. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for doing this. It's a great podcast you got going here.
Thank you so much. Just trying to keep up with you, Jeff, usually we like to start off by giving a quick intro. So for those of us who may not be familiar with you, which again,
sure.
I don't know how that's possible, but just in case.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a sales guy. I bleed sales blood. It's been a little over 30 years for me in the new home sales business, and I just love it. I find it's such a fascinating industry anyway. But then, I'm always interested in the way that salespeople sell. I'm increasingly interested in the way that buyers buy. Like, if we can figure out the way that buyers want to buy, we can reverse engineer our sales presentation to make it easy for them to do that. And so that's really my thing. I love buyer psychology. I love behavioral economics. I love the anatomy of a decision and how we break that down into its component parts and understand the way that people think. So it's such a great business. So I sold for many years, sales management for several years, national sales director for a very large home builder in the United States. And now for the last, it's been almost coming up on 20 years on my own, working with builders, large and small, all around the United States and Canada and some other parts of the world as well. And it's great. It's a great business. I'm a very blessed man.
Yes, you are. And thank you so much for continuing to bless us all with your teaching, because I think there's definitely not enough of that in the home industry. And I had a pleasure of sitting live a couple of times with one of your trainers, Amy O'Connor, and she's just phenomenal.
She's great. Yeah.
She is. So it sounds like you've built quite a team around you. And
although it's funny because we're a virtual company, right? Everybody, did you see my dog in the background?
I did. Well, you know what? I was going to say, don't worry. It may be my dog be bursting any second, because today.
This is the thing. I'm working out of my house in my studio. I have an office studio, and we've blown it up. It's under construction, so I had to come out into the backyard. So yeah, you're going to see my dog walking around.
That's the best scenery you could possibly imagine.
That's right, exactly.
California backyard. So where in California are you?
I'm in a little gold rush town in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe. So right at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, it's called Highway 49. And it connects all these old gold rush towns that popped up in the 1850s, and now they're bed and breakfasts and antique stores and restaurants, and that's us. We live in this small little gold rush town called Newcastle, and it's great. We love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful there. I know my husband and I had a pleasure of vacationing there a few times, and actually tells you anything about us. One of our destinations was to go to Sierra Nevada Brewery. So
yeah, there you go. There you go. We have our share of microbreweries out here. There's no question about it.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, you know what? I wanted to ask you a question. So your new book is titled "The Keys to Unstoppable Sales Success: 8 Mindsets of Elite High Achievement Salespeople."
Yeah.
So why mindsets? Why not skills? Why did you name it mindsets?
Yeah, this is book number 8 for me, and 6 of those books are on skill sets, and this is the second book that I've written on mindset. And I not because 6 versus 2 because skill is more important. There's just that's what people want, but there's no question about it. The mindset, in my opinion, the mindset is stronger or more important than the skill set. And if your mindset is off, then all the skill set in the world is not going to carry you through. So we really do have to look at it and constantly ask, well, where is our mindset? Are we in the right place? And that's particularly challenging in a sales position, maybe even more so in a sales position where you're dealing with a highly emotional buyer. Right? We're not selling coffee machines to big corporations and a purchasing manager who's got a budget that he's got to work through. Right? We're selling a very important product to an emotion-based buyer, and that really changes things a lot. It really changes the dynamics of the interaction. So because of that, I look at it as a salesperson who is charged with giving out positive energy all day long. Well, you can only give out that which you have inside. So if you're going to give out positive energy all day long, you better be eating it for breakfast. You better be snacking on it throughout the day. And that's really why I wrote the book, just to be able to look at it and say, okay, just one different mindset at a time. How do I go back and revisit and say, well, where am I doing in the areas of confidence, and where am I doing in the areas of positive energy, and those things that are going to collectively make up for a really great salesperson.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that being a salesperson is similar in a way what you're going through as a coach, as a trainer, right? When you're in front of a large audience and you're giving and giving and giving, and you have to stay very positive and pumped up, and it's very draining to be in front of that kind of an audience. So I'm sure it applies to you more so now even than being a salesperson. So what do you do?
I don't know about that. I respect what you're saying, and I get it. I'm not sure that it applies more to me than it does to a salesperson, because I am, first of all, your point is very, very valid in the sense that we are influencers, right? That's what I do for a living. If I'm going to go out and work with a company or with a salesperson or a sales manager, I can't make them do anything. The best that I can do is influence. Well, that's what salespeople do. Salespeople can't make somebody buy. The best they can do is be the best influencer that they can. But, in many ways, it's more difficult, I think, for salespeople in the sense that this decision that they're asking their customer to make is highly personal, highly emotional. It requires a tremendous amount of commitment, a tremendous amount of trust. Those things are very, very difficult. We ought not take what we do lightly, because we're asking customers to really put a lot of faith in us as sales professionals. But to your point, that means that we have to be our best self. Just like, even for you, I mean, when you're starting up your podcast, when you're getting it ready, when you're going to interview a guest, the last I checked, the market for podcast hosts who are dull and boring and having a bad day and letting everybody see it is pretty weak, right? So it's that's what we do. We are influencers, and so we have to make sure that our mindset is right in order to be effective in the influencer role.
Yes, and I think what I meant by your role is even tougher is that in a sales role, a lot of the times we're influencing one-to-one, where you're influencing one-to-many. So that could even take
that's fair.
exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you've been very successful in what you do and been able to stay positive. And obviously you pay a lot of attention to the positivity and the mindset. And you talk about protecting your mindset in your book. So how do you protect your mindset? We all seem to have that negative Nancy in the office around us.
Yeah.
And, obviously we're all professionals. We have to work in a professional environment. Mm-hmm. So you can't necessarily cut them out of your lives. So how do you suggest we handle somebody who's being negative?
Yeah, your question actually tees this up really, really well, because the most important thing that we can do to be able to protect our positive mindset is to own that we can protect our positive mindset. So if we play this victim role, if we allow other people to dictate what our mindset is going to be like, we're not doing ourselves or our customers or our company any favors at all. So there is a sense of ownership right from the very beginning. So I think we have to start by looking even at our rituals. What are we doing every day to protect our mindset? So, for me, and I'm not necessarily the biggest morning person in the world by night. I started in the restaurant business way back another lifetime ago. So I always counted myself a night person, but I found those mornings to be so valuable. So what happens in the morning? I have my mindset rituals. I will not check my email first thing in the morning. I will not read the news first thing in the morning. I won't go on Facebook first thing in the morning. The first thing I'm going to do is have mindset time, like right away. So I journal every day. I journal very, very first thing. It's part of my ritual to be able to clear my mind, to make the commitments to myself before anything else happens. Because, look, I get it. I mean, I sold homes for many years, and even in the job that I have now, there are always things that are coming at me that would take me out of my mindset, that would take me away from my positive mindset. If I haven't made an an intentional investment in myself, a commitment to myself, very, very first thing in the morning, then I'm probably going to be living my day by default and allowing other people to dictate my mindset for me.
That's so important. I think you hit it right nail on the head, is that you have to be intentional, you have to be committed, and if you're not in charge of your own day, then the day's just going to run you. And of course, in this fun industry of new home sales, there's a lot of things that come up throughout the day, and a lot of fires that we need to put off. So it can be very, very exhausting.
Yeah, but even just the idea of, I've talked to many salespeople who, even when they get to work, the very, very first thing they do is fire up their email. And my question is, what are the chances that there's a problem waiting for you on the email? And the answer, of course, is about 100%. Mm-hmm. So the very first act of your business day then is to adopt somebody else's problem. And now your mindset is already shot. You're a victim of what other people want from you. It's not a productive way to begin your day. So I would just challenge anybody who's listening right now to ask, what are my rituals to own my mindset? How do I make sure I don't invite somebody else to steal my mindset from me?
Mm-hmm. So important. And I think it's very contagious, and your customers can always feel your emotions. And if you project that positivity, confidence, then the customers will be more willing to trust you and go along with what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think that confidence, we appreciate confidence, and we gravitate towards confidence. When you look at the captain of the athletic team or politicians, or we pay for confidence, and it's absolutely contagious. That confidence becomes contagious, not arrogance, but it's confidence, and it becomes contagious. And I think if I'm sick and I have a doctor who looks at me and says, there are a lot of different ways to treat this, and I Googled it, so I've got some idea. I'm walking out of that doctor's office. I want somebody who's like, this is what's going on. This is the best course of action. I need to hear that confidence from the professionals in my life, including the sales professionals in my life.
Mm-hmm. So you brought up a great point about a borderline between confidence and arrogance.
Yep.
So what's, in your opinion, separates confidence from arrogance? Because obviously we don't want to be to the point where we're turning people off. And how do we know if maybe we're being a little bit overly confident and coming off the wrong way?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a test there that you can apply both to yourself and as you're seeing it on other people. And the test is what I would call the motive test. So I know that for me as an influencer, just like a salesperson, my motive is to make people confident in their decisions. It's to help people to be confident in their decisions. And if they are confident in me and in my expertise, then they are more confident in adopting what it is that I have to say. But it's the motive. My confidence is not for me, it's for them. If my confidence is all about me, like, look at me, that's when it's arrogance. So it's the motive test that's going to tell us whether or not we are appropriately confident as those people around us need us to be, or whether we are being arrogant because it's now the Jeff Shore show and I want all the attention. That's the key. I also think that we can look at it and say, if we define confidence, and there are a lot of different ways to define confidence, but for me, I find that confidence is the intersection of two things, belief and mastery. Do I believe in what I'm doing and in the value that I bring to the people around me? And have I mastered the way in which I do it? If I believe very strongly and I've mastered my technique, then collectively what I have is confidence that I can then share with others in my life.
Mm-hmm. And so speaking about belief, so sometimes what happens, especially with new construction, is that maybe you believe in the product very strongly, and you live and breathe that particular builder. And I think it's very important that you exude that, and you'd be willing to buy that particular product yourself that you're selling to your customers. But say there's been and again, nobody's perfect. There are issues that come up, and something happens maybe with multiple customers where there's some kind of an issue that they're bringing up, and suddenly your confidence and your belief in that builder starts to wilder. How do you, as a salesperson, then go on? How do you resell yourself on that product? Or, if you lose confidence in that product, does that mean you need to, get out and switch to another builder? Or what do you recommend? Because I think that tends to happen from time to time, whether it's the product or for whatever reason, you just lose that spark, that belief.
Yeah. So there are a couple of thoughts here. One is that, salespeople do tend to look at it and say, could I buy this product? If I'm selling a home, could I live in this home? And I don't think that that's a healthy question. Unless you're actually a buyer and you're actually thinking about buying a home. I have sold many, many homes in my day that I would not buy because it wasn't for me. It wasn't my lifestyle. It wasn't my need. It wasn't my location, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So homes are very personal things to those buyers. And so I think the first thing we have to do is take ourselves out of it. And this is a very difficult thing to do for salespeople. It might be whether I buy this home, or it might be whether I'm struggling with a specific objection. A perfect example is a salesperson who says, well, I would never buy a home that backs up to power lines. And I look at that and I say, so? This is irrelevant information to me. I don't need to know what you would buy and whether you would buy a home that backs up to power lines. The only question is the customer in front of you, is it the right home for them? But when we project our values on other people, I don't believe that we're doing them any service at all. There are a lot of people out there that would look at it and say, I've done the research. Would I rather not look at power lines, or would I rather look at the ocean? Yes, I would. However, I'm a privacy-oriented person. I don't want to sink a two-story home looking into my backyard, and therefore I've decided that this home location against the power lines worked for me. That's great. But if you have a customer a salesperson who's looking and saying, well, I would never live against power lines, then we end up emitting that negative vibe, that negative energy. And I think that that's where we make a huge mistake. So maybe it's best to look at it this way. Value is like quality in the sense that when you look at quality, it's not a seller word. It's a buyer word. It's only quality if the buyer thinks it's quality. Same thing with value. Value is not a seller word. It's a buyer word. My opinion of value as a salesperson, it doesn't matter unless it applies to you. Ultimately, the customer gets to decide what value is, and I think we need to sort of just get it out of the way and get our own opinions off the table.
Dropping some truth bombs there, Jeff.
Well, I've seen it happen. I've absolutely seen it happen. I've seen salespeople apologize for their product for some flaw that they perceive or that others have perceived. And then what is it? Then what happens? Then we lower the customer's confidence. We're raising objections at that point that weren't even there, but we lower the customer's confidence. Look, there's no such thing as a perfect home, right? Everybody is going to compromise somewhere in what it is that they're buying. And if we're bringing up what we perceive to be negative or others have perceived to be negative, we're not doing the customer any favors at all.
I think that's one of the more challenging things that we can do as salespeople, right? To keep our own emotions out of it.
Yes.
I remember there was a situation when we had a house for sale that backed up to railroad tracks, and the customer, and I mean, everyone, of course, thought it was like the worst home site on the planet, right? And the customer was so excited about this home site because it reminded them of their childhood, because their house was a house on the tracks.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And then you see people every now and then. You'll see a community that's sort of dead in the water, and then a sales manager will go out and hire a brand new salesperson who is just so excited to have a shot and is too stupid to understand that people don't want to buy homes against railroad tracks. They don't even know any better. So what do? They sell homes against railroad tracks, right? Oftentimes it's, there is a psychological battle that's taking place for salespeople, and it's called the availability bias. And the way that it works is, if I just heard 10 people in a row complain about the yard size, then I absolutely believe that the 11th person is also going to complain about yard size. And all they have to do is say yard or yar or yeah, and I'm already like, oh no, here comes the yard size objections. And when I flinch at all, then I'm showing the customer, I'm validating that whatever you're worried about, you should be worried about. That's a legitimate concern at that point.
Yes, definitely. And sometimes it's very tough, especially if you're selling in a difficult community where people are bringing the same objections over and over. And it's tough not to get frustrated with it. And in your book, you talk about you choose how to react, right? So if a customer is being nasty to you, if the customer is being negative,
Yep.
You choose how to react to that. And if you react in that same way, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, this is huge. This is huge. This is so very, very important. We have to decide whether we're going to be, well, let's look at it this way. If I am protecting my own mindset, if I'm intentional, if my rituals are there to make sure that I am my best self, I bring my best positive self into a conversation. If I come in completely positive and the customer comes in completely negative, something interesting happens. Within about 5 minutes, somebody changed. Either they came up or you went down. Mm-hmm. But if they come in negative and I come in negative, or even if I come in emotionally neutral, that conversation is going south. So there is a unilateral decision from me and what I'm going to bring into the conversation that it's not dependent on what the customer brings. I made that decision. I can choose what my attitude is going to be. Now, if I apply principles of empathy in there and understand our customers are going through one of the most difficult things that they will ever go through in their entire lifetime, well, just think about that for a minute. I mean, just think about those really trying times that people have in life, right? If you're the death of a loved one or going through a divorce, you're just a different person in those times. You're stressed out. Yeah. And when I ask salespeople about this, most of them will admit that they are nicer people at cocktail parties or wedding receptions than they are when they walk into a car dealership. So, what happens? We get in that high stress environment and it changes our behavior. It doesn't change our character. It changes our behavior. So, and salespeople admit that that's what they are like when they are in that high stress buying environment. But for some reason, we are short to give our customer that same level of grace along those lines. If we understand that I have the control over my own attitude, and what I'm seeing right here is not mean, it's not snippy, it's not snarky. You know what it is? It's afraid. Our customer is going through the emotion of fear, and it manifests itself in a way that is oftentimes a little bit off-putting. If I can understand that, then I can reach out to them with empathy.
It's like the psychologist,
yes, yeah.
How many different things you have?
You're right. No. Every salesperson would have been well served to major in psychology in college. No question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeff, in your own career, have you ever gotten to the point where you were dealing with a customer who was so negative and nasty that maybe there is a time where you say, listen, maybe we can't meet your expectations. Maybe this is for you. Because there is definitely abuse that can happen.
Sure. Yeah, there's a line that can get crossed, and I'm not going to tolerate somebody dropping F-bombs in my direction. At that point, you're right. It's probably time to look at it and go, you know what, this may not be the right place for you. I can say that in a very kind and polite way. We don't have to be abused. But I'd love to tell a quick story here. I remember in the sales office, and a gentleman came in, and he was kind of cold. He was kind of I wouldn't call him mean necessarily, but he was cold. He was icy. And we were standing over a topo table, and I was showing him a row of homes that that faced across the street was called Crandall Creek, and it said right on the map Crandall Creek. Well, one thing you need to know about Crandall Creek is that there's never any water in Crandall Creek. There's never any dirt or foliage around Crandall Creek. It's actually concrete, and it's an overflow in case the Alameda River ever flooded. Okay, so it's not a creek at all, but it used to be a creek, and so it's called Crandall Creek. So I said to him at one point, I said, we've got these 3 homes here across from Crandall Creek, and he looks at me and he goes, excuse me, that's not a creek, it's a ditch. So now he had really turned, negative, and it was sort of a pressing sign right there. And I looked at him and I go, you know what? I think it depends on whether you're buying a home or selling a home. And he laughed just a little bit. And I went, I got you. Okay, I got you. Now we're okay. And I came back and I said, I agree. It was once called Crandall Creek. That's why it says Crandall Creek on the map. So the key point is that it's open in front of you. I think that's the only point I was trying to make. And from then on, it was great. And now, in this point of the story, I'm supposed to tell you that he bought a home for me and referred 3 other people. That did not happen. But I can tell you that his name is Kyle Phillips and his wife's name is Jill Phillips, and their son is Aaron and their daughter is Kelsey, who lined up with our kids together. We have vacation together 4 times. We just had lunch together on Sunday afternoon. I met him 30 years ago, and we are still the best of friends today. But I want to point out, he's one of the nicest guys that I've ever met on the planet. But when he came into that sales office, his behavior was different than his character. He's a character guy, but put him in a stress situation, and his behavior is going to change.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's almost like a challenge for me when I have somebody walk in through the door like that, and I'm like, how can I turn them around? And,
yes, but that's the right mindset. That's the right mindset. Great salespeople do this. They're like, what I'm seeing right now is not this person's character, it's the behavior. So here we go. How do we get them to turn? Let's look at it this way. If you only want to work with nice people, the corner on nice people is already taken. Everybody wants to work with the nice people. Go out of your way to take good care of the people who are not so nice, and they're going to be your best friends, right? I'm sure you've seen that in your own career.
Absolutely, yes. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about from your book is you talk about relaxation time.
Yes, yeah.
So I am a big person for relaxation. I think I go strong in the office, and my sales manager is always like, "Ooh, you take all these vacations. I want to have your life." I'm like, you know what? I need to unplug. I need to get away. And then when I come back, so I can go 100% at it, because you talk in your book, it is physically, emotionally, it's exhausting. And you definitely need that. So I think in our day and age, with the cell phone, with 24/7 accessibility, it's a very, very difficult task for most people to unplug 100%.
Yes.
So even when we're not going on vacation, just, after the office hours, whether it be your own manager calling you on your days off because there's an emergency, or your customers trying to reach out to you, knowing that you have your day off. So what are some of the best practices that we could utilize here that I want to create that boundary. How do I do it without hurting people's feelings? And especially, how do I say to my manager, back off? It's my day off. I need a day off.
Yeah. This is such an important question. And when I look at, I think it's important to understand, first of all, that effectiveness in sales requires a very, very sharp problem-solving ability. You have to be able to think quickly on your feet. You have to be able to, your short-term problem-solving skills are very, very important in sales. And great salespeople are excellent in the area of short-term problem-solving. Short-term problem-solving requires creativity. It requires these big bursts of creativity all throughout these conversations and all throughout the day. Well, that creative muscle needs its rest. The creativity works very much like a muscle. When you drain it, it gets tired and it doesn't work as well. We've seen this happen all the time, right? When we get really tired, it's the end of the day, it's the end of a long week, or whatever it is. Our brains are tired. We are just worn down. And if we do not disengage and allow the creative muscle to get some rest, then when we try to re-engage, we cannot be fully present. So the only way to do that is to be able to manage your life enough to be able to set up boundaries that would cause you to disengage. I am in the process right now of working through a very powerful, very difficult book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. This is part of my quest to thin out distractions in my life and to look at it and say, how can I think that this phone can be just, it can be incredibly valuable, but it can also be a distraction addiction after a time, where I just have to be looking at it all the time, even when I'm not working. I feel very much the same about email, that email is a distraction addiction, that I have to check it all the time. And these are unhealthy behaviors because they're constantly keeping our brain engaged without any period of rest or relaxation at all. We have to be able to calm the mind, even in the workday, in small snippets. This is why I will read oftentimes for 10 minutes just to get a mental snack. This is why I will oftentimes sit down and just breathe deep for a little bit. But it also means that for me, Jeff Shore, when I'm off, I'm off. I'm off. Okay. I don't make any apologies. Yeah, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder right here. See that hammock? I use that hammock.
Oh, okay? That looks like a nice hammock.
So, and for me, I have to engage in things that will cause me to be fully engaged, because the only way to fully disengage from something is to fully engage in something else. So, when I'm out playing hockey, which I do frequently, I'm never on the ice thinking, now, do I have to be in Scottsdale on Tuesday, or is it Dallas that I'm at? That's never what I'm thinking, right? I am so fully engaged in what I'm doing at the moment that I'm allowed to completely step away from everything I have to think about at work. So now my discipline is to say, great, how do I do the same thing when I'm talking to my wife, Karen, or when I'm going for a walk, when I'm reading, when I'm doing anything at all? This idea of bouncing back and forth from distraction to distraction is crippling, and it will not refresh us when we need it the most, when we need our creative brain.
Yes, but it seems like it's almost expected in a lot of home, a lot of builders. I think it's an expectation when they're hiring you, and even when you're going on vacation, they say, "Oh, you're going to bring your laptop with you, right?" Or with those phone calls. So is it realistic to be completely disengaged, do you think?
Look, I can't make anybody's value decisions for them as to what they're going to allow to happen and not happen. I wouldn't do it. I would not. Because my family happens to be more important to me than my career. And because I have that priority in place, I think it makes me far more effective when I'm at my career. What I would say is, if you could put this much of a boundary on it, though, if you're on a day off and you get a phone call, well, that's a reactive action that you're taking. If you have to take your reactive actions, I get that. What I'm not a big fan of is the proactive actions. So when I'm thinking about work and when I'm catching up on work on my day off, these are things that I have control over. It's one thing if I have to react to something, but when I'm proactively going out of my way to eat into my family, my hobbies, my rest, that's when it becomes unhealthy. So I need to step away as much as I possibly can. And if that means that I need to actually figure out how to turn a phone off, I don't think most people know how to turn their phone off, but if I could figure out how to turn the phone off, even for a while, where I can have this dedicated time doing something and fully engaging in something else, I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, I think a lot of people find it as almost like a point of pride now that they're 24/7.
I think you're right. Yeah. It's dangerous, but I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. So, well, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for being on today's show.
That was fun.
Can you tell us where we can pick up a copy of your book?
Yeah, you can get anything you need on jeffshore.com, and you can go to there's a store button there. Just click on that; it'll take you to the books. You can also subscribe there to the podcast, The Buyer's Mind. Every week we talk to psychologists, behavioral economists, really top marketing people. People who are way smarter than I am about the psychology of a purchase decision. And if you really want to know how to sell well, then just start by figuring out the way that your buyers want to buy. So, and then of course we do have our weekly newsletter. It's free. Just sign up. It'll show up in your inbox. A little video from me every Saturday morning. Just a little pick me up to get you started into the selling weekend.
Definitely. And I am a subscriber to your podcast. Love it. Listen to it all the time, and you guys definitely head on over in iTunes or Stitcher, whatever you're listening, subscribe right away. How do you have 8 books in you?
You know what? It is. I usually live the book first and then write it afterwards. So that makes it so much easier. So, I live the books. I teach the books. I write curriculums on the books all before I write the book. So by the time I write the book, I've already lived it so much that it's not as difficult. If you're sitting down and you're writing from scratch on something that you don't really deeply know yet, then that research process is really, really long and arduous. I'm not suggesting that's a bad idea, but for me, I live the book first and then I write the book.
Makes sense. And if somebody wants to hang out with you, follow you on social, where is the best place to catch you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. On Facebook, it's Jeff Shore Community, and then LinkedIn.com/Jeff Shore. Twitter @Jeff Shore as well. So, and if you go to jeffshore.com, we've got all of our social links there. We do the Instagram thing as well. So we're all there.
Don't forget those millennials.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes.
Great.
And Jeff, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I feel like I've now made it officially, having interviewed the Jeff Shore. Such a fan, and really means a lot to me that you made an appearance. I know you're a busy guy.
Well, thank you. It's a good podcast. It really is. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.